Well, Razorback fans, On3 believes that Sam Pittman is the coach in the SEC that is on the hottest seat entering this season. But is he actually? We'll talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday as we have quite a few things to talk about. Do a little baseball as Dave Van Horn got another great edition, and also get into some random SEC news too. Something else that bothers me dealing with the Texas-Oklahoma edition. But still, we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I wanted to open up today's podcast with a particular list that was released by On3. And during this time of year, you know, there's a lot of different lists that get thrown out there, and sometimes they're pretty legitimate. Sometimes they have some merit. Sometimes it's just for fun. But I have always been pretty fascinated by people who put out the coach's hot seat rankings, or in this particular case, it's called the 2024 pressure rankings of certain coaches in the SEC. Now, there are 16 teams now in the SEC, and they rank them all 1 through 16. Of course, 1 being the hottest seat in all the SEC, and 16 being the lowest. So I'll go from lowest to highest on this list in the SEC, and you know, some of you may agree, some of you may not. But Mike Elko from A&M is number 16. Number 15 is Jeff Levy from Mississippi State. Number 14 is Brent Venables from Oklahoma. Number 13 is Josh Heupel from Tennessee. Number 12 is Mark Stoops from Kentucky. Number 11 is Hugh Freeze from Auburn. Number 10 is Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. Number 9 is Kirby Smart from Georgia. Number 8 is Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss. Number 7 is Steve Sarkisian from Texas. Number 6 is Brian Kelly from LSU. Number 5, Shane Beamer from South Carolina. Number 4, Clark Lee from Vanderbilt. Number 3, Kalen DeBoer from Alabama. Number 2, Billy Napier from Florida. And number 1, Sam Pittman from Arkansas. Now, it's wild to me that, first off, some of these other names that are in the places that they're at, I feel like is a little weird. I mean, I feel like Lane Kiffin being at number 8, like he should be way down on the list for what he's doing at Ole Miss. They've never even seen the success that he's having right now. But anyway, I could spend a whole time talking about that. But we're specifically talking about Sam Pittman. And I think it's a pretty much a foregone conclusion, or at least a unanimous vote, that either Sam Pittman or Billy Napier are on the hottest seats entering into this college football season in the SEC. I don't think one is just far and away above the other. But I also wouldn't argue if somebody said Billy Napier was a little bit ahead of Sam Pittman. But either way, those are the two coaches that are on the hottest of seats. But they're also for different reasons. Well, let me take that back. They have different minor reasons. The major reason is just because they're not winning enough. I mean, that's why any coach ever gets on the hot seat, is just because they're not winning enough. And Sam Pittman and Billy Napier just haven't won enough. But, you know, Napier's also had some stuff go on where, you know, whether it's the NIL fiasco that Florida had with that quarterback and, you know, over-promising, under-delivering and everything. Like, there's been some off-the-field stuff and some other things that have happened. But Sam Pittman is the one that I would say universally is liked, universally is respected across the conference, across the league, across the country. But for many different reasons. But, of course, the main one being not winning. He's number 1 on this list. And so I started thinking about him. Like, does he deserve to be number 1 on this list? And the answer to that question simply is yes. If we're being completely and totally honest with ourselves, if we're really looking at it through an unbiased lens, Sam Pittman being number 1 on the coach's pressure rankings for On3 makes all the sense in the world. He's got a lot going against him right now. And a lot of people, a lot of fans wanted him gone after last season. And if he had been fired after last season, I don't think anybody would have screamed how terrible of a decision that was, just because of how things have gone. But I will say how interesting it is that Sam Pittman is entering in his 5th year. And we know the success that he's had throughout his seasons. I mean, he went 3-7 with the 10 SEC schedule, 10-game SEC schedule in his first year. Then he went 9-4. Then he went 7-6, and then he went 4-8. So the trajectory is going down, and that's really what the problem with Sam Pittman is right now. He shot up like a rocket in the very beginning, and now he's teetering off. And now Arkansas had some major issues last year with a losing season, looking abysmal on offense, had some culture problems, it certainly seemed like. And now they're trying to fight back and trying to get it all going once again. Can they do it? Maybe. But imagine if Sam Pittman's years, his seasons, his success, and what he had for over the past 4 years, imagine if they were reversed. Just how different everything would be. You know, it's one thing because you got to remember, you're coming off of Brett Bielema and Chad Morris. You went 4-8, 2-10, 2-10 in 3 straight years before Sam Pittman arrived. All right, you had the COVID season where you had a 10-game SEC schedule. Like, we all know what he was going up against. And when he came into Arkansas, he breathed a lot of new, fresh air into it. But think about if it had been reversed. All right, just for the sake of the bit. Look at it for where year one, if he would have gone 4-8 in year one. I mean, people wouldn't have been happy. They wouldn't have been like, oh, yay, this is great. But coming off a 2-10, 2-10, winning an SEC game, it's like, all right, well, he's going to get it going. You know, it depends on how things went, maybe in the right direction. But you're improved. It's not great, but you're improved. And then the next year, you went 7-6 with a bowl victory. Suddenly things are starting to shape up a little bit. You're like, okay, he's on the right track. He's going forward. Everything's going great. Or at least great in the way of the trajectory. It's being where we need to be. And, you know, let's see what he does in the next year. Well, then imagine he goes 9-4. If he went 9-4 in year 3, I mean, they would be a completely different scenario right now. People would be going nuts for him. They would be like, I mean, he would show that he has built the program up and built it the right way, and it's doing really well. And again, they got a great trajectory, and they put some things together, had some really nice wins. And then it would even make to where this, say, his final year. I know they went 3-7 in SEC play because it was an all SEC schedule, but for the sake of the bit, once again, let's look at it as if, since Arkansas won 3 SEC games that year, they would have gone 3-5 in SEC play. They played Notre Dame on the, like, we'll just say they go 6-6, all right? Say they go 6-6 or 7-5, either one of those. We'll do 7-5. Let's do 7-5. 7-5 is right there. People aren't like thrilled, but they're still pretty content because they're like, hey, we went 9-4, and then say if they won the bowl game, 8-5 the next year, we're still good. Things are still really looking up, and everything's good to go, and we really love Sam Pittman and the direction he's going. Imagine the difference that would make and how people would be viewing it, but that's not reality. That's not the case. And it's almost been to the demise of Sam Pittman to where he did so good so early, so quickly. I mean, he had Arkansas in his first 2 seasons. He won 7 SEC games. 7. Folks, from the year 2016 to 2019, Arkansas had 4 SEC wins in that stretch. He had 7 in 2 years. So he really came out of the gates firing, and people were all about him because he was so relatable. He was so fun. He was laughing. He was having a good time. And, you know, he just wanted to go out there and win big games, and he did. He had a lot of fun doing it. The offense was fun to watch. The defense was vastly improved. I mean, it was just a really good year. But when you start crumbling down like that and you start having it to where you're going downhill, nobody's signing up for that. Nobody's feeling good about that. Nobody's going to be pumped up and excited for you because of that. And that's why Sam Pittman is number 1 on this list. If he had been reversed in the seasons, and I mean, he'd probably be middle of the pack right now. He'll probably still be feeling really good about him. But you can't do what you've done. You can't go from 9 wins to 7 wins to 4 wins and just expect everybody to be on board and act like everything's hunky-dory and there's no problems. Because obviously there are. And they got to fix it. They know it. Pittman knows it. He's done some things to hire Petrino, and we know that there's a lot at stake here. But I honestly don't have a problem with the list. I honestly don't have a problem with Sam Pittman being number 1 on this list. It's not me saying that I want him fired. That's not me saying that I'm hoping he loses and I'm hoping he's gone. Like, I'm not saying that. I want Arkansas to do well. I want him to do well. I want them to succeed. But it's a result business solution. It's a result-driven business, and you have to be able to do it consistently. Sam Pittman hasn't done it yet. He's got to show a lot this year, but him being number 1 on the list for the hottest of seats when it comes to the Razorbacks, yeah, I can see it. I can totally see it. All right, folks, got to tell you, we are brought to you by FanDuel. We know that FanDuel is the place to go when it comes to your sports betting, and we love sports. In fact, we love them so much that we never want them to stop, but as the playoffs have winded down, we get fewer games. Sports just aren't sportsing like we all want them to, but FanDuel keeps it going as they get the sports going whenever you want, because all they have to do and all you have to do is open up the app and dream up any bets anytime that you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is looking to hook up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. It's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So Razorback Baseball got another edition. I mean, they're just getting after it in the transfer portal, and this one's a big one. This one's a nice one, a very, very nice one. And it comes from an East Carolina left-handed pitcher by the name of Zach Root. Now, he announced it on Monday, and he did on social media. That's just kind of where things happen these days. So that's where you hear about it. But he called it, he's actually going to be a junior, but he called it my next chapter. So here's what's crazy about it, or here's what's great about it, is that he was leading, this is according to hawksports.com, he was the leading candidate to be East Carolina's staff ace next season, but he entered into the portal June 5th. He had a 6-2 record for the Pirates with a 3.56 ERA and 68 1/3 innings. He had 3.62 strikeout to walk ratio with 76 strikeouts against 21 walks. On3.com rated him the number 4 available player and the top pitcher. Baseball America rated Root the number 10 available transfer. So just looking at those rankings and those numbers, you got a big-time player, and he happens to be at a position that's pretty important from last I checked, pitcher. So Matt Hobbs doing Matt Hobbs things and getting some big-time players in recruiting. We know that they're going to have to be replacing a few players off the pitching staff. I mean, you're not going to have Molina. You're not going to have Hagen Smith. We'll see about Tigert and the situation he's in. But, I mean, you're going to have some changes there. And you got to be able to find some guys. I think we talked about Gabe Gackle and how good I feel about him, and maybe 100 Deets if he can make some noise and come in, but stay healthy. But this is the type of player to where I'm not saying he comes right in and becomes the ace, but he's capable of it. I think that given his circumstances of how good he is a guy that probably will be a weekend starter. And, it's something you have to celebrate. It's something you have to be really good about too. And so both of them being both him and the Landon Beetleshees, I think is how you say his name. I always forget how to do it. He's the Ohio State transfer, but both of them are left-handed pitchers, and both of them are the top left-handed pitchers according to Baseball America. So that's big time, man. That's awesome. Also, Baseball America, Peter Flaherty said this about Root's pitching. He said, quote, his changeup is a plus pitch that gets solid separation off his fastball and flashes ample fade and late tumble, while his above-average slider, especially against left-handed pitchers or left-handed hitters, is long and sweepy with a bit of depth. He could be a big-time program's major splash of this year's transfer cycle. Well, let's certainly hope so. He's from Florida. He started 12 games and 13 appearances in 2024. He limited hitters to 56 hits on a .228 batting average. And during the NCAA Greenville Regional, he pitched twice against Evansville. And during the first outing, he threw 75 pitches and allowed 2 runs across 5 innings. And in the regional final, he threw 61 pitches that allowed 4 runs and 6 hits. And now he is the 10th D1 player to announce a transfer to Arkansas this season. The Razorbacks also received pledges from 5 junior college players and 1 Division II transfer for a total of 16 transfers. Yeah, you see that number, you hear that number, it's like, man, that's a lot of transfers. But hey, that's what you got to do. That's what you like to have. That's what you want it to be. And you want to be able to make this team better. And I think that they're in the right position to keep doing that. There's a lot of players that are on this team right now that I still don't know what they're going to do. No, we got to wait on them and see what they end up doing. But overall, I've been pretty impressed and pretty pleased with the the moves that Dave Van Horn and this staff has made in getting guys in. But at the end of the day, it's like we talked about after the season ended. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how great the players are that you get in. Doesn't matter about how much hype there is. Doesn't even matter what happens in the regular season, man. It's just about the postseason now. That's what's going. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to take care of. You got to get it going in the postseason. You got to do it right now. It's as simple as that. It's not simple to do, but it is as simple as that. That's for sure. We'll talk a little SEC talk here on the other side of the break, so stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So, I don't know, man. Having Texas and Oklahoma, I remember when it was announced that they were going to be joining the SEC, I guess was it 2 years ago at SEC Media Days? I believe it was 2 years ago. I remember it just took everybody by storm. Like, it shocked the world. And it was like, holy crap, this is a lot bigger deal than what we even anticipated. And seeing the reaction from it was really fun, and seeing how insane everything was really fun. Like, and honestly, when it happened too, I was like, yeah, bring them on. Bring them in. I'm all about it. Like, I want to have more competition in the conference. I want to have some history between some programs. And also, it would be nice being in Fayetteville to actually have a conference foe that is within driving distance fairly easily. And I guess Norman's probably, 3 hours, I think, 3.5 hours from Fayetteville. So it's nice to at least have that. So I enjoyed it. And I was pumped up and was like, all right, great. Have them join and we'll see how they do. And it was fine for a while. But then it's like, I kept thinking, okay, maybe it'll just be normal. It'll be normal. It'll be normal. Well, I should have known better, because as we got closer to when they finally joined, which is now, the over-the-top ridiculous nature of everything that's gone along with it is just like rolling my eyes in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, okay. Now, I'm not blaming the SEC network or the SEC for doing it, because that's their job. I mean, you got to hype it up. I get it. I totally get it. And it is a big deal, because you're going to be bringing in a ton of money, just printing money, having these two schools added into the mix. You already were, but this is just icing on the cake. But man, just seeing the over the top, like in the interviews and the talks with coaches and former players and everything, it's just like, okay, relax, guys. You're going into the SEC. And I will say, at least it's probably more so from the Texas side, like the confidence that they have is pretty on brand. It's pretty on brand for Texas. And they're coming off of a college football playoff appearance, and they got some good things going for their sports. They just hired Jim Schlossnagle. We talked about that fiasco and that controversy. So, they did that. It's whatever. But I'm just like, man, this is a wild time, but also the confidence is a little too high. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think Texas is going to come in and do nothing. I think that they'll have some success for sure. And who knows, maybe they'll do it in the beginning. But the idea that they're just going to roll in and dominate is funny to me. It's laughable to me. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do in this conference, especially in football. And yes, I know Nick Saban's no longer here in this conference, so that's changing some things. But, this is still a really tough conference, and it's tough to do it week in and week out. You're not getting some of the easier games on your schedule like maybe you were used to before. So it's going to be the ultimate question of how does Texas handle, and Oklahoma, being in the SEC pretty consistently. I don't know. But football's where it's all at. I think that Texas and Oklahoma will be fine in baseball. I think that they'll be fine. I mean, as fine as they are in basketball. Oklahoma's not great. And then I guess with Texas, they've been decent. They had a decent run this past year, but can't wait for them when they actually play Chris Beard at Ole Miss. So they had that. And then, they got some other sports that have been good. I guess Oklahoma's been really big on softball. Texas is volleyball. Again, they got a lot of sports that they're good at, but I don't know, just the arrogance I've already sensed it. I'm like, man, this is wild. But I will say also too, I saw the promotional video that the SEC Network put out for the welcoming of Texas and Oklahoma and all of that. I could be wrong. I watched it once, and because that was enough for me. But I'm pretty sure the only team that was mentioned in that video that was not Texas and not Oklahoma was Arkansas. Because they were mentioning about Texas having rivalries again. Well, I guess Texas A&M was technically too. So, but they talk about Texas having rivalries again with Texas A&M and Arkansas. I was like, whoa, How about that? Bringing it back the rivalry as it's meant to be. That's what's the most important thing. But either way, appreciate everybody listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.